That was my very first case and my introduction into the world of human smuggling. And I was like, holy,
Yeah.
but I want to raise up and highlight the good officers and get them more training. Absolutely zero mental health from my department.
Welcome back to the IA Guy, a police podcast here with your host, Marlon Marachi. Today, we're going to the wonderful state of Arizona to talk to my guy, AJ Jacobs. Sounds like a movie star name, a stage name. I got to know AJ, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, where AJ was checking out my Instagram page through a mutual friend, and he's like, dude, why is Internal Affairs following me? Because we come to realize that everybody's got an IA story. And so I got to know AJ. We started talking. He goes, dude, you know what? Got to get you on the pod. So here we are, Code 6 with AJ, man. Hey, thanks for coming, bro.
Thank you very much, Marlon, for the invitation and our previous conversation. And just real quick, my heart and prayers and thoughts still go out to all the first responders that are still working out there in LA.
Yes, you know what? God said, hey, let there be rain. And now we're doing much better. And I appreciate that. For what it's worth, there is a lot of damage,
Sure.
a lot of emotions everywhere, specifically in the Pacific Palisades and Altadena communities. So thank you for that. Hey, man, let's get right to it. Look, I do know that you are a veteran, seasoned detective, right? You've investigated a lot of big time cases. We'll get into all that. But I got to ask you right off the bat, look, if you're in a room full of sergeants that are getting ready to begin their internal affairs assignment, what's the one thing you want them to know about that job?
Don't let your previous dealings with that officer dictate your investigation and let the evidence be the evidence.
Okay. You sound like you're saying that from experience.
I'm going to say very first and foremost that I do believe that I was treated very fairly by the sergeants that did my IA, and we'll get into that. But I do know of previous investigations that had happened where it was very obviously not a big deal, but maybe this person had had, previous issues with one of the internal affairs sergeants, and you could see it just dripping through the investigation. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like, you know how it goes, man. Everybody knows, oh, that guy's a shithead, or whatever. That guy's retired on duty, or whatever the case may be, and they let those personal feelings dictate their part of their investigations.
Right. So leave your biases at the door if you're going to do
Amen.
that job.
Amen.
I take it that at some point it becomes self-serving.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't like
100%.
it. Yeah, you know what? Make it sustain and give them a 5-day penalty, whatever the case may be.
There you go.
Yeah, I come to realize that when I ask that question, a lot of my guests do say, hey, be forthcoming, be honest, be truthful. Uh, the other thing, too, and maybe you can agree with me or not, is how about someone that's actually gone through the whole process because they know how the treatment is
Absolutely.
in this dark alley, if you will, right?
Absolutely. And have someone that's actually been through that's an excellent point because it is a very long, dark alley, especially when you know as well as I do, whether or not there is merit to an investigation or not, you absolutely become a pariah.
Yeah. Segue into my next question to you is like, look, you came in the academy in September of 2006, me in July of 1998. And I got to ask you, here you are in the academy. Did anyone from internal affairs come in and say, hello, we're from IA and these are our duties and responsibilities? Or when you were on probation, your field training officers, what impression did you get of internal affairs, if any?
I'm really racking my brain currently, and I remember special investigations came in, like if you were involved in an officer involved shooting, which is what I ended up becoming. I genuinely cannot recall anything specific internal affairs related. All I knew was that the term "you're going to get an IA" was used as a threat on a regular basis from certain supervisors. So, my entire interpretation of what an IA is had nothing good.
Why do we do that to each other? Aren't we the worst, our own worst enemies? Why?
Amen.
I don't seem to think that And you would think, look, I haven't checked in with my beloved LAPD, but I'm willing to bet if I were to walk into an academy that starts next Monday, and if I were to ask like the drill instructors, hey, dude, is anybody from IA coming in? Let's just say they say yes. Uh, Fine. What do we tell them? Exactly what you want out of an investigator. Would that be
Right.
something? Yeah, I mean, I would think you would say something along the lines like, look, here are our duties and responsibilities. This is what the definition of misconduct is, right? And just make sure that you're truthful, honest, forthcoming, and all that stuff.
I would add to that that I think actually now as a private citizen, one of the most important things that I cling on to is my civil rights. And I actually wish that there would be much more of an emphasis on what a police officer's Bill of Rights are, what a police officer's personal rights are, and stop with the threats of, an officer should feel just as comfortable stepping, or deputy or trooper or whatever, should be just as comfortable stepping up and saying, I'm going to exercise my rights and I'm going to consult my attorney first. Obviously, based upon whether it's an administrative investigation or criminal, whatever the case may be. But the department should not be looking down on officers exercising both their constitutional rights given to them and their rights given to them by their state law regarding whatever Bill of Rights that they have. They should be completely comfortable in utilizing those things because just as police officers are supposed to defend and protect the Constitution,
Yeah.
department should be defending and protecting their officers as well.
No, 100%, man. I just rattle my brain sometimes and think, why is it that we can't be more informative with our young officers? I mean, come on, now you and I are done.
Yeah,
Podcasts like this, one of many reasons to have this platform is to educate, to inform, to have some awareness, especially with the situation that we're about to talk about,
sure.
where you know what, let's get right to it. There is you were involved in a domestic incident,
Yes.
with your wife at the time, and
Yes. Currently.
that, yeah, that's awesome. That's great. I don't condone divorces whatsoever. Uh, but with that being said, you did ask me, and I have your briefing.
I sent you everything.
You sent me everything. You wanted me to look at this. I pretty much went ahead and I have a whole bunch of questions about this because it's well written, but of course there's always a whole bunch of question marks. But first and foremost, there is this incident that happened off duty, and I'll be the first one to tell you, with my experience in internal affairs, that anytime that you have an off-duty incident that it's family related, I'm telling you right now, bro, not many command staff officers, and in my case, in a border rights in a hearing, right? There's a panel, two command staff officers and a civilian, or you can choose three civilian members. But no one likes to get into your bedroom and start judging you about what happened or how is this connected to the performance of, in this case, being AJ, right?
Right.
So that's a tough decision to make. And I know someone here just did a complete 180 on you. And let's talk about it, man. Talk to me about what it is that you felt, because I know you said that you've been treated fair.
By IA themselves.
They
Yes.
were respectful and professional, and they were
Yes.
right. I understand that. But can we agree that maybe the process was kind of like the punishment? I mean, you waited. How long did you wait for this to go down?
Months.
And in those months, here's my golden question: was anybody there for you?
Okay. So I want to add color to two things real quick before we dive down the road. I have been open and honest about what happened to me in my past because I want to be able to sit on your podcast and have open conversations. And I don't want anybody ever to come back and use it against me or say, look what we found out about him. No, I had a conversation with the number two of the police department that arrested me on my podcast. I sat down and talked about him. So I just wanted to add that color that, I appreciate, being brought on and even though I have a past,
Yes.
being allowed to come on and talk about it. And I appreciate that. Thank you. It validates me. So that's all I wanted to say. Okay. So was there anybody there during my internal affairs investigation? Absolutely not. The captain over the unit that I was in, specifically told my group, I was told, this is third-hand information. I was told specifically ordered no one is to talk to AJ. There is one particular individual that literally said, screw you, I'm going to talk to AJ. And that one person is the only person I still talk to from my previous department because they literally turn their backs.
Yeah, you
And
know what? Uh, and you know what, AJ? A lot of the audience in this IA Guy Police podcast is my alum, LAPD. I want to say about 70, 80%, probably even more. And it goes anywhere from command staff all the way down to even recruits are listening and watching this. And I'm so blessed. And so I can tell you that whoever's watching and listening probably shares the same sentiment about being all alone in the dark alley, not
no,
having there anyone for you, being ordered not to speak to anyone besides your attorney, your representative, and your commanding officer or the investigator, right? And so I get all that. I do know, just to kind of give a quick, summarize what happened where you got involved in this domestic incident,
mhm,
seeked help. You were pretty much drinking heavily,
mhm.
and congratulations, you've been sober how many years?
I use the term that I'm not sober because I went through. I mean, obviously, I went through life-changing issues. I didn't go through a program or anything like that. I respect all of that stuff. I literally just reached a point in my life where it's like, I don't need alcohol anymore, and it doesn't do anything for me. And I also switched substances due to my back injuries and all
Yeah,
that type of stuff.
of
So
course.
we can talk about that later. But yeah, I just don't drink anymore.
Right.
So I mean, it's been 6 years since I've even like had a beer.
Oh, good. Well, not so good because when you make it here to LA, I was going to invite you to awesome old fashioned. Old fashioned is my go-to drink.
Ah,
Yeah, you know how that goes, and it's got to be Japanese whiskey, man. Hibiki or Santori, I'll take as a present anytime during the holiday.
nice. Okay, good to know.
Just good to know.
Good to
But
know.
with that being said, there's a lot of there's what's the word I'm looking for? You went through a lot of trials and tribulations in your personal life,
Very much so.
and you were very forthcoming and forthright, honest, and trustworthy with the department, right?
Yes. Yep. I'm not on the Brady list.
So, in this brief, I got one question. Well, one of several questions. The first question I have is: you were interviewed twice. You were interviewed once in April of 2017, and then fast forward May, June, and then 2 months later, you did a subsequent interview. Is it my understanding that perhaps they interviewed you subsequently because there was just information that they wanted to ask you, or they forgot to ask you in the first one, or what was that like?
The scope of that second one was very, very narrow, from what I remember.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was very, very narrow, and it was strictly had anything like this had happened in the past.
Right.
So was there anything that had occurred or anything like this?
Okay, got it.
So that's really all of the case was.
Yeah, I know, but you know what? What sucks is that as an IA investigator, I'm a true believer, and I say this all this time, all the time. My mantra is, you know what? No stone goes unturned, and be
Right.
prepared, man. That's a very important question.
Yep. I
I
agree.
get it. They probably didn't think about it. Oh, you know what? Let's get AJ back because we got to ask this question. Got it.
Which, and you know how the process goes. I mean, I live 50 miles from where downtown was, where my office was, and so it's the sort of thing where daycare issues and all that type of stuff. So right in the middle of the investigation, I have to go back. So it's just one of those other added extra inconveniences,
At,
because it had to go through the proper process through the whole thing
yes,
so that nothing was not done properly.
of
I
course.
get it. I get it. It was just really annoying.
Hey, AJ, at the time that you had this
I
incident,
apologize.
talk to me about the duties and responsibilities of your assignment. And, it seems to me that you have a lot of experience, what we call here in California an SME, right? A subject matter expert in dope arrest, man. All that.
hmm
Talk to
hmm
me.
So I started off my career, real quick summation, 7 years in patrol on nights, Tuesday through Friday nights. While I was on that part, or no, then I switched to days due to divorce and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And then I went back to nights. And I specialized from about the year 2009 and on. I did criminal interdiction specifically while out on the highway. So I was, human smuggling loads, dope loads, child crimes, stuff like that involving, running up and down the highway because I was a state trooper. So I specialized in that. And then I got into SWAT. I became a part-time SWAT, and it was also a crisis negotiator on the SWAT team. And then also while I was doing all that, I became an EMT, but then I moved into investigations later on. But no, I focused heavily on the criminal interdiction side. That's where that's like the fun stuff for me. And I loved doing that. And I loved, particularly when it came to human trafficking, I loved being able to interdict those loads and actually rescue people from what would be a horrific life. And I've been into the drop houses. I've physically been in the homes where a gentleman was being tortured in a brutal way. And while his family was on the phone and they were torturing him and extorting the family for more money. So I really believed heavily in the job that I was doing, that I was interdicting, quality of life crimes and serious criminals.
Does the average police officer in the state of Arizona know how much of an impact your assignment had? It sounds like I don't think people realize how big of an assignment and responsibility that particular agency and or your assignment was. What do you think?
It's one of those things where it's the officer had to be a self-motivator to get into that. In order to start doing criminal interdiction, you go and, typical state trooper like your California Highway Patrol, chasing taillights, responding to accidents. I started all that, but then I started learning, and we had interdiction squads out on the I-10 and I-8 and all that stuff that interdict this stuff. And I started seeing like, hey, these guys are doing some really cool things. So that's when I started getting into it. And then, can I share just a real quick story?
Yeah, please.
My very, very first, I'm out there on the highways. I'm trying to make the big arrest. I'm trying to get my name out there. I'm trying to have all the fun stuff happen. And my very, very first criminal interdiction load, this was I've done the training, and now I finally got one after like 2 years. Lincoln Navigator, Hispanic male driver, 6 or 7 Hispanic males inside of the vehicle, cowering down and trying to hide themselves from being seen. And then on the passenger floorboard, the front passenger floorboard, is a 19-year-old little girl that is, what's happening is her payment to come into the country is she's being by all of those dudes in the vehicle. I stopped the vehicle, and again, it's something they didn't run. So I stopped the vehicle, immediately recognized something's going on, start just detaining people. The spider senses. I had reasonable suspicion based upon the fact that they're all trying to cover themselves and be covert. I'm not violating anybody's rights. And then that's when I called my supervisor, who I loved and who loved me. I have nothing but positive things to say about that supervisor, Rudy Lujan. So shout out to Rudy Lujan. Called him down here, and that's what we were able to get. And he was a Hispanic man, my supervisor, who grew up actually in Mexico and understood the culture. Yeah. So as he comes down to the scene and starts interviewing these Hispanic males to see which one is, doing what or whatever, he's able to see the cultural differences that I would never be able to see, and helps me with the investigation. Very, 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 very long story short, we call Immigration and Customs Enforcement. There are 1811s come out, and they take the investigators come out and they take it. And I come to find out a couple months later that they ended up getting the mother or the girl and her mother, whatever the special visas are, whatever I don't know immigration, whatever the special visas are, and put every one of those dudes in prison that was in that vehicle that was raping her, and they got to stay in the country legally. That was my very first case and my introduction into the world of human smuggling. And I was like, holy shit, there's something to this. It's not just immigrant families that are coming up here. Yes, they probably are immigrant families that want to come here. I know that for a fact, but this is still a criminal element that needs to be stopped.
Right. Wow, man. Hey, thanks for sharing that. I really, I can tell you that there is a great appreciation from me personally when you start doing these criminal interdiction, drugs, human trafficking. I got to tell you, man, that's got to hit home hard in terms of emotions, to the point where, shit, man, I don't know, maybe I'll probably have one too many old fashions just to kind of cope with everything, especially when you're doing it day in and day out, and constantly having unfortunate back in our days. There was no one to seek help or to talk to, because that was just, that was frowned upon.
Yep.
As opposed to now, there is like, how they have life coaches, they actually have like law enforcement coaches, someone like you that
would be amazing.
Give you a call, or someone like me, like say, hey man, you know what? I'm going through all this. I see it a lot on Instagram. There's this police post, shout out to,
sure.
In police post training, where on Sundays he actually says, hey, Sunday questions. I forgot what he calls it, but people ask, and they ask all these general questions, which is very, very educational, but more than anything, it's very therapeutic, because it gives you kind of like a sense of calmness or maybe even some understanding. But you and I, as you're telling me the story, I couldn't even imagine going through that every single day. And
No.
it took a toll. You tell me, did it affect you in some way, maybe?
Oh, absolutely. There's times and cases that were brutal. There's times and cases that were horrible. There were times and cases where you're looking at, the human aspect of it was they are human beings. The human aspect was is that they're trying to come here to have a better life. And here I was, stopping them from that. But then there were also the cases where there was abuse and there was horror and there was 50 people stacked up in the back of a van, And I'm very, very fortunate that I didn't have any deaths. Thank God. Did have a pretty serious accident and roll over and guy got ejected and all that, unfortunately. But all of the trauma and the PTSD comes from a later case we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But
And if I may interject, just save me worst incident in your career. Save me that for a little later on, because
yeah, yeah.
that's definitely a question I definitely like to ask all of my guests. Well,
I will say this real quick.
please.
I grew up in the golden age, or I was working in the golden age of law enforcement, kind of like you were. Law enforcement was well regarded, especially here in Arizona. We were loved, we were well regarded. And the number one thing about having been out there at that time and why I'm still an advocate, why I still love law enforcement, because I still believe that 90% of them are out there to do the goodwill and the public service. And like my crew that I worked with, that's all we wanted to do was to be the best cops that we could be, stopping the bad guys to prevent the bad guys from doing harm to the good guys.
Mhm.
That's all we wanted to do. In the scheme of things, and I'm sure like every police squad, one guy specializes in this, one guy specializes in
Yeah.
that, but we would all come together. And that was the cool thing too about the department I worked for. We had a lot of autonomy. So I apologize for that little tangent, but
No, no, no.
I,
I
I
really
still
appreciate.
have a heart for it, and that's why I want to be an advocate in the best way possible. We need to talk about the bad. We need to talk about the bad guys or the bad officers,
Yeah.
but I want to raise up and highlight the good officers and get them more training and funding and money.
Yeah, to do God's work, man. That's right.
Amen.
And you and I both know God has the worst to offer that we see each and every day when we're out there in the streets. AJ, talk to me. Here we are going through all this. Uh, uh, I would even say probably trauma, but definitely some moments of darkness
Sure.
in your personal life. I like to know in your journey through all this is uh, I have a note here says that you were pending criminal charges
Yes.
at one point, and
Yes.
unfortunately, I suppose they decided to terminate you, and then about a week later, your criminal charges get dismissed. The question I have for you is, well, that's what it says here. It says that on July 18th, you were terminated from your employment, and then on July 25th, which is a week later, the Pinal County's attorney's office dismissed the criminal charges.
Okay.
So my question to you is that you think it would have made a difference had they would have known that the criminal charges were rejected?
No.
Did
No.
they
There
not
was there
offer
was
you?
ulterior
You
motives.
think?
There was ulterior motives behind my firing.
Okay, talk to me. What do you think?
So this is the part I've never said out loud, and I'm not going to mention names. I worked after I left patrol and I became a detective. I became a detective in special investigations. Special investigations did officer involved shootings, critical incidents. We did the administrative. There's the criminal side, the administrative side, and then also the internal affairs side. I was not internal affairs, but did internal affairs investigations for other agencies. Um, Only a couple times. So, you can't do the administrative first because you have to do the criminal first
Correct.
because you can't let them talk. You can't make them talk and all that stuff. So, someone in my department, my previous department, was involved in an off duty incident that was all over the news and was being shown live on TV. And this person was involved in an incident. And ultimately, the person that was being pursued ended up rolling and dying, getting ejected from the vehicle and dying. So this particular individual is heavily involved in the situation, but then suddenly we've come to find out that as I arrive on scene, I'm like, oh, okay, this is bad. We got lots of officers involved. We all know who's involved. Um, who's doing the administrative or who's doing the criminal? We're not doing the criminal, AJ. Okay, cool. Who's doing the criminal? We're a big agency. This is a big case. Who are we farming it out to? Is Phoenix coming here? What's going on? We're not doing the criminal, AJ. Oh, we're doing the administrative. Okay. So who's doing the criminal so I can go talk to them? Hey, AJ, you need to shut your mouth. Oh, okay. So I stay on scene and gather the evidence that I'm allowed to gather and go back to the office. And I'm like, so who's doing the criminal? And I get told, AJ, you need to shut your mouth. And that was that. So
Wow.
I stayed vocal. I stayed, yeah, no, this is wrong. And we should be doing a criminal investigation on this. I stayed very vocal on that. Then I got in trouble.
And this is when this happened.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's almost the same. Like I always say, man, I know for all my listeners and people who are watching, I always say this is that at some point through the levels of command, well, I should say in the levels of review, it gets personal, man.
Yeah. So
Sucks.
I don't know where you're going down the road with, but you alluded to the fact that there was somebody that did a 180 on me.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
that's why.
Yeah, well, you know what? Everybody has 284 hours. That equals to what? 6 times 4 is
24.
yeah, it's like what was it like 6 months? Something like that?
Yes. So that break in service. So do you want to talk about what my discipline was
Yeah.
going through the investigation? So I fuck up. I screw up. I apologize if I'm not allowed to curse on your podcast. I screw up.
Only catches a little bit, but go ahead.
Okay. I I go through the process. I admit my mistakes wholeheartedly. I do everything that I'm required to do. My wife and I make amends. I go to, do all of the things, admit 100% open and honesty with my department. I go through all of those things. My sergeant, my captain, my major, and my lieutenant colonel all said that, look, you f***ed up. You did wrong. Pardon me. Sorry. You screwed up. You did wrong. You are going to be punished. What we're going to recommend is a what's called there's 280 hours and then there's 284 hours, whatever that strange number is. And
Right.
what that is a break in service
Okay.
for retirement purposes. So it actually extends your amount of time that you have to retire by a little bit. And please, nobody quote me on this. I don't remember specifically what it is, but there was a distinct difference between 280 hours and 284 hours. So I was absolutely getting the most severe punishment.
Hmm.
And I was like, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I go into my meeting with the division head, and he reads the report, pats me on the back, humanizes me. AJ, you screwed up. You made a mistake. We're going to get you back. We're going to get you back out there. And again, I had never, ever once had an IA prior to this. Over a decade on the job, never once had an IA. I go home. I'm happy. I'm excited. Great. I'm gonna have a break in service. No big deal. And again, they had worked it out to space out the time that in which I would have to take off. So I get a phone call when I get home. It says, "Hey, be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the morning." And it was from my supervisor, who I really really liked. And I said, "Why?" He goes, "I don't know." All right. I show up the next day. Walk upstairs. There's my sergeant. There's my captain. I don't remember if the major was there, but I also had a peer support person also. So I had a peer support with me through every single interview. So that person was with me through the entire time. And I very specifically picked that person because several years before, unfortunately, they had been involved in a similar incident. They actually got put on probation and were allowed to be a police officer while on probation because they pled guilty and they survived.
Yeah.
So they were still, so I specifically picked that person because they had been through the process.
Is that the person that was mentioned here in the?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Good one. Good.
yeah. So I show up the next day and I walk into that office, and that division head who humanized me the day before, who was looking me in the eye like a man, was looking at me like this and wouldn't look at me and wouldn't talk to me and said, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to go ahead and change my recommendation to termination. And I literally like jumped back, and my peer support person were like, well, wait, what? They said, yeah, that we're gonna have to go. And he said, we fired people for stealing less than $20. I said, sir, this is not a crime of moral turpitude. I didn't steal something.
Right.
I made a mistake. And I said that to him. And then he just got up and walked out. That was it. And then they said, do you want to go talk to the person? I said, yeah, I'll go talk to the person.
Yeah.
And the person, I believe the entire conversation is in that.
Yes. And if
The
you allow
entire.
me to quote unquote, because I got,
I
dude,
don't want to. I don't want to use names,
no, 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 of
but
course not.
please, by all means.
Yeah, no, there's no names. The only thing that sticks out to me, quote unquote, what just why even say stupid stuff like this? I will tell you up front that you have every right to appeal everything you want to. Well, you just got done. You just went from 284 suspension
Right.
days terminating me. Of course, I'm going to want to appeal.
Right.
That makes that's just that's just gibberish, and that probably leads you to understanding where I'm going with this. You do not have a career of poor behavior. Well, hey, that just kind of well, thanks. That kind of reinforces probably the reasons why you, right? Because we did talk about, you and I had a conversation about at cause. There is a definition of at cause, and I don't mean to segue a little bit on it, but there's A, B, C, and D. What I don't know, and damn, man, you took me back to my law school days, is what I don't know is um, if A, B, C, and D have to apply, or is it just one of the definitions, right? Either A, B, C, or D, or is it all three? I don't know, but if I can point out for the audience here, uh, pursuant to what just cause means in the state of Arizona, one of those definitions that the discipline is not excessive and is reasonably related to the seriousness of the offense. And it doesn't say or, it says and the officer service record. So here's what the experience comes in. So when you start looking at your jacket, right? And the fact that you've never had any internal affairs, no I
Zero.
whatsoever, zero,
Zero.
coupled with the fact that you are working a special assignment where you're very effective, you got great evals, people are vouching for you. In other words, your character witnesses, if you had any, would have said that, you know what, AJ walks on water and splits the Red Seas. The guy is just the best thing since sliced bread here in the state of Arizona. And next thing you know, within a matter of, I don't know, a day or two, boom, you know what? We're going to go ahead and terminate you. That to me sounds like there's a message from up above saying, you know what? Get rid of this guy. And it doesn't really matter. We'll just deal with the repercussions of an appeal process, which leads me to my next question. Was there any other, because this brief goes to the law and before the Law Enforcement Merit System Council, right? Also known as LEMSC, right? Is there another step for your appellate process, or is this pretty much it?
There is, and I just absolutely didn't care after that. I also want to add color to this too, that just after that incident happened, the person who ultimately ended up terminating me was my unit was investigating him, and he was the one that terminated me. So from the previous incident that he was involved in. So with that being said, though, I had also had a horrific back injury, and I had attempted to file medical during that process, and I was denied from filing medical because I was on administrative leave.
Oh, wow.
So, um, with that being said, I apologize. What was your question? I went off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, the question was, is that your next step of an appeal?
Oh yeah, I apologize. So yeah, so there was the initial termination from the department, and then LEMSIC, and then there is POST. So there still is Arizona POST, Peace Officer Standard Training, that that does the licensing for all peace officers in the state of Arizona. After I lost LEMSIC, I was done. I was dealing with absolutely horrific back pain, and I couldn't go on with the process anymore, and I just didn't care. So I did let that go, and they did revoke my certification, and I did not fight it at all. I didn't even have representation there, and I also did not like my lawyer at all. I thought he was a little chicken. So I was like, if you're the idiot that I got to deal with, you have no spine and no backbone.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to continue through with this process. So
If
I let the revocation happen.
Well, you know what? I'll let you wrap up about this incident in a little bit, but if I may ask you, as you sit here today and reflect on this incident, uh, is there anything you would have done different?
I would have gone for the throat. I would have. I wish I would. I wish I would not have been scared. I wish I would have not been the listen. Look, take accountability, take responsibility, and take ownership of your actions is 100% what I did. But stop bending over. Stop bowing and kowtowing to every little thing. You can come out and I wish I would have gone for the throat, and I wish I would have said what I should have said initially. And the fact that I didn't, I don't know if it would have made a difference or would have made it, you couldn't have made it any worse. But again, I wish I would have exercised more of my constitutional rights. I wish I would have stood up and not been so in fear of my department.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, would you agree with me that it would have gave you some closure?
I know there would have always been an ultimatum, but you know what brings me closure? Having conversations like this where I can just be open and honest and not judged. And I can say, look, I took accountability and responsibility. And I do want to ask you a question.
Yeah, please.
Would you have terminated me?
No, because my experience, having done a couple of border rights hearings where there is domestic violent incidents, like I told you in the beginning, no one likes to get into someone's bedroom to start judging and casting a spell like, oh my God, he's just a horrible person. Oh, I've been married for 30 years. I would never do the things that he did. So it's kind of like so imagine having a civil trial and you're hearing all this.
Right.
And that panel member, bro, if you're the one that takes it personal, I would never hit my wife. I would never have an incident. You're checked out. You are not being, you're not being honest and you're not being responsible for the process. So in other words, it's not
Right.
really about you. So in my experience, no, do 284 days. I think that's what, 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
look,
I
two
did not hit my
months.
wife. He's just
Yeah,
using that as an example.
yeah, no, and I've
Just
had
kidding.
cases like that, and I understand the incident. We can talk all about that, but an incident's an incident. The
Yep.
saddest part about this, and I should say, talk about closure and therapeutic in a sense, is that you certainly are not the last one that's going to go through this. That's the
Right.
saddest part.
Yep.
And you weren't the first, bro. Because I'm taking you back to 2011 when I've had some cases involving domestic incidents. But no, look, I take in consideration your reputation, your character, your evals, and are we? And again, I was just a sergeant putting on the hearing, so I had to bring forward all the evidence
Sure.
and introduce all the witnesses so they can hear the testimony. And they deliberate and they do a full analysis and examination as to whether they're going to find you guilty or not guilty, right? Because you're going to plead not guilty.
Right.
And in some cases, like yours, you know what? Plead out, man. I'm guilty.
Right.
Let's not even talk about what happened, because I'm here to tell you that it's sustained. In other words, it occurred.
Right.
Not
We
argue,
can't argue facts.
we're not arguing facts.
Right.
100%. Now we're just talking about penalty, right? And so that's why I talk about this abusive discretion. There's a lot of cases in the city of Los Angeles where they have a writ of mandate, right? Where they actually
Okay.
go to a court and file an appeal. And one of the challenges that you asked before the judge is, look, take a look at these allegations. Okay, they were sustained, but they terminated me. So what we want you to do is weigh the evidence that was presented in this hearing, right? And judge, determine whether or not they abused their discretion.
Yep.
So, like you use in your example here, you got a probationer that got involved in the domestic incident, and next you know, he just gets a couple of days of suspension.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think he gets like 3, bro. You got 284 hours.
Yeah.
That sounds a little abusive to me. I probably would have narrowed it down, probably reduced it, maybe a month, but these are all lessons learned. The
Sure.
fact you got help, you got treatment, you were very forthcoming, honest. That's all we ever ask, so that would be my answer to your question. Would I would have fired you? Absolutely not, man. Look, with that being said, however, there is cases that involves domestic incidents off duty that are egregious, bro.
Oh, sure. Sure.
Have to be where there was, imagine, and I don't want to use this excuse, I don't want to be too graphic, but here you are in the kitchen and she's got the knife and she's
Right.
you grab her by the hair and just throw her up against the kitchen counter. She splits her head. You got to have really, really egregious circumstances to say that, you know what, we don't think that this person uh, needs to be a police officer anymore for these reasons. Because if this person treats his loved ones off duty, we can only imagine this particular accused employee.
Yeah.
So what benefit is that for us? If anything, it's a detriment. So, you know, anything you'd like to add to that before we move on?
I do want to add something to that though.
Yeah.
And I want to add the fact that one of the things that I've really delved deep into post law enforcement is the whole, what are we doing for PTSD?
Yeah.
What are we doing for trauma? What are we doing for all of my issues and my alcohol abuse and my relationship to alcohol and my relationship with my family was a direct descendant of my job. And my job was so freaking stressful. I was, cool at work. I
Mm-hmm.
was focusing at work, but not understanding them. I'm, dealing with dead bodies. I'm dealing with dead cops. I'm dealing with all this type of stuff. Zero. And and absolutely zero mental health from my department. Zero.
Yeah.
None.
I would, in addition to that, I would add IAs. People don't seem to understand, and I'm going to say this quote unquote. I've been saying this since Jimmy Zurich. Shout out to Jimmy, my boy Jimmy Z, who was here. LAPD just retired. He's going to come back in the studio and we're going to have some fun. But he did say, hey, you know what, Marlon? The punishment's not the penalty. The punishment is the process. And if we can just get command staff and unions to understand that when you're going through an IA, it's going to take a major impact on you.
Amen.
Emotionally, and it's going to kind of, you up psychic, man. It's a psych issue. Because here you're waiting for, let's just say you even have a sustained complaint. Let's just say you said, you know what? Yeah, fuck, man. You know what? I fucked up. I own up to it. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to learn from this. And it's going to be sustained, right? The adjudication of sustained, this, your work IA is that means that it occurred.
Right.
Okay.
No argument here.
I'm waiting for the penalty. And
Yep.
that weight weighs heavy on your shoulders, man. And that can be very stressful.
All of it is, and I think that your viewers are probably going to be the exact same as I was, is that when you're a cop, man, you're a cop.
Yeah.
You love the job, you breathe the job, you eat the job, you sleep the job, and you want to be a cop.
Yes.
And then the next thing you know, you screw up, no matter how big or how little.
Yeah.
And everything is hanging by a thread. Your literal, future is hanging by a thread. And because IA is used as a threat, it's used as just constant punishment as a threat to keep you in line. Yeah. Instead of teaching, instead of guiding, instead of showing, rookies and even seasoned detectives that are, you got all the bad ones sometimes that need to be just shown the way. It's used as a constant threat. And I just don't agree with that type of mentality. That doesn't allow for any type of growth.
Yeah, no, totally. You know what? I do know you and I can agree that there's just all kinds of different types of styles of leadership. There's leadership books, all this stuff. And you remember scare tactics. Those work.
Yeah, no, they don't.
No, they don't. You know, and so look, if we're going to be that change, right? Where, hey, adoptive leadership or, whatever type of leadership that may be, because there's got to be thousands and thousands of books and authors about leadership, which is good. I'm not saying it's bad, but you know what? To your point, we use internal affairs as a threat
constantly.
And use internal affairs as a weaponization of the system, of the process. So that's why we're here having this conversation and, try to change, man. Hey, bro, thanks for sharing all that. I really appreciate it. Let's move on. And I got to ask you, worst incident in your career?
I'm going to go with the one that messed me up the most.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the shooting of police officer up in Sholo, Arizona in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the one that I remember when I had my interview to join the Special Investigations Unit. And the captain, who was just the most honorable and admirable man on the planet, he said to me, he's like, you never know how you will respond when you see a uniform on that table.
Wow.
Powerful. So I start my SIU career. Things are going fabulously. I get sent to every amazing training across the country. And we had a budget that was amazing. So I got sent everywhere. Uh-huh. So then the call comes in. First and foremost, I have family that lives up in Sholo. My two children, this is back in 2016, lived up there with their mother. And so I'm in, it's one of those days where it's boring. I'm watching watching stuff that's happening across the state, and I see a shooting has happened up in Sholo. I see all the stuff that's going on. So I run to my captain and say, "This is going on right now." They said, "Okay, well, let's get on it." SWAT gets called up, SWAT gets canceled. It's a big fiasco. Basically what happens is there was a guy who was running a makeshift meth lab and selling drugs out of a hotel in Sholo. The days in contacted the law enforcement. Law enforcement showed up to go talk to him. As they go to go talk to him, he takes off running, goes runs around the back. They cut through the middle. Bad guy just starts popping off shots. Boom,
Mhm.
done. DRT. So then suspect flees. This now it's a manhunt. And Sholo, Arizona, by the way, is a very, very small little mountain town, 150 miles northeast of Phoenix. So it's very secluded. So it's very, very secluded, and it's all windy ass mountain roads to get there. So resources are getting called in. Lots of things are happening behind. You know how it goes. We have an active manhunt. We have an officer that's shot in little tiny itty bitty town, no resources. I'm getting chills talking about this. We get called up to the scene, and again, still active. Bad guy. We have no idea where bad guy is. So now we've got the law enforcement death. Unfortunately, his body's been taken to the hospital. So from that point, I show up, and I was an EMT. So I was an EMT. So I speak medical. My ex-wife was a nurse. My current wife works in the medical field. I speak medical talk. I can go and chit chat and all that. So I always did the follow up at the hospitals. So my sergeant, we started giving out, just like homicide style. We meet up. We start giving out jobs and stuff like that to go do follow up your case agent. Go do this. Go do that. I go to the hospital. I get sent to the hospital with the officer's body. So now I'm there, doing the job and collecting the evidence and all that. We had our forensic photographer come up, so he and I photographed the body, and and so I'm there at the scene, and we're photographing the body and all that stuff, and then it's time to move him, and so we go and we don't have an American flag, so the guy who's transporting the body goes, "I'll be right back," so he runs to his house, grabs an American flag, and brings it back. So as we're getting ready to now take him out to the vehicle, now again, hours has gone by. I mean, the manhunt is still going on. The suspect is still outstanding. There's lots of things still happening. As we go to move the body, we drape the Arizona flag and then the American flag over him. So, anyways, I did not expect this. So, anyways, it was just a very surreal moment. And so we asked the hospital staff and everything to rise and all that, and you could hear a pin drop in that entire hospital. So we take his body out, and then he gets put in the vehicle and then transported down to, because Yavapai or that county did not have a morgue. Right. So they contracted with another county that's 200 miles away. So they had to take the body there for the autopsy and then bring him back for the funeral. All that. Okay, I'm laying that little bit of foundation because now the bad guy, 8, 10, 12 hours later, gets shot and killed. So we've got two now crime scenes in this little tiny itty bitty town. Mm-hmm. My one guy, in he's case on the hotel. Before I got sent to the hospital, I made entry into the hotel room and find out it was a freaking meth lab. So we had to back out, and hazmat has to get involved and all that type of stuff. And then now we've got the crime scene at the cabin where the suspect has been shot by 4 of our SWAT operators. Mm-hmm. So we got to split the scenes, all the logistics and all the amazing stuff. So I apologize for rambling. What happened, I did not expect to happen. So that was,
well, call me Dr. Marachi for a reason. Not the first guest.
I don't care. You don't have to edit anything out. I don't care if people see the raw motion.
Oh, it's good. Go ahead.
Yeah. So then we started investigating the SWAT officer involved shooting and the dead suspect. So I'm laying this foundation because it's Tuesday when I woke up, 6 a.m. on a Tuesday.
Right.
It's now Thursday evening. We have not slept. My unit and my crew had not slept. Yeah. A moment of sleep. We were on the job, on the scene, and my partner was put as case agent on the shooting of the suspect. So I was co-case, and we were partners like that. So I was co-case on it. So I was, you know, that goes and, you know, off doing separate things and all that stuff. But her and I were on scene for 43 hours straight.
Yeah.
And then that's dangerous and unsafe.
100%. But you know what? I would imagine just, you're pumped up, man.
Yep.
The adrenaline is just to another level. It's amazing what the body does because
Yes.
you're not even thinking of sleep. You just want to hunt this down and just
Amen.
KMA, man.
And
You know what? No, you know what? There's not going to be a trial.
they,
We're not paying. I think at one point, the county of Los Angeles, it used to cost $1 million for a murder trial. You know what? It's okay, taxpayers. We're not going to go through that.
that is exactly what DPS SWAT did to that dude. And I'm fully okay with that. I will
Yeah.
stand here and say that sometimes that is very, very necessary.
You know what? As religious, Lord is my savior, an eye for an eye, man. And
Amen.
it sucks to say that. I'm probably sinful for saying that, but there is times, and I thank you for sharing what you did, and I can only imagine what you've gone through. I've gone through a couple of funerals in my career, but nothing compared to what you went through. So, you know,
That was first and foremost, that was just now very cathartic in and of itself and talking about it with you. So I appreciate that. But yeah, no, I've finally been able to get to a point where I can even talk about it. And at the end of the day, like here in a few minutes, when our conversation is wrapped up, I'm going to be totally fine
yeah, of
because
course,
I've done the work
yes,
and I can talk about it and I can express my emotions and I can move on. But man, the mental health and law enforcement thing is something that we need to, and that's why it's my worst case is because, you know, all of the things that you said, the adrenaline, we want to catch the bad guy, we want to do a great investigation, we want to do all that good stuff, and at the same time, that's 43 hours of straight adrenaline that
yeah,
was never able to process in my body.
totally.
And the more I learn about wellness in my own self, the more I learn about the fact that your body stores trauma. And I had just been hanging on to that and hanging on to that and just, you know, drinking it away with Jack Daniels every night.
Yep. Yep. Which leads me to a next point. Cause when I think of you, just so you know, for the record, I think of Snoop, bro. You know what? Rolling down the street with some Indo, sipping on gin and juice.
I was whiskey.
Talk
Yeah.
to me. Blue to Green podcast, man.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me. What's that all about? Why did it start?
Okay.
What's going on? And how can we get a hold of you and all that good stuff? Because I know you're doing good. I know you're
Thank
doing
you.
for the good.
Thank you. I've been very fortunate that I'll talk about my podcast in a minute, but you know as well as I do, there's this group of former cops that are kind of like grouping up together on social media. They're kind of coming together and making these like cool little alliances. And it's like I've been allowed to be involved in those things because I just give an open and honest feedback and leading to the thing I'm the most open and honest about, which is the fact that I discovered cannabis for medicinal purposes. So post law enforcement, as I said before, I had a very horrific back injury. I had a 14 millimeter extrusion of my L5S1 disc that was absolutely compressing my spinal cord. I couldn't move, I couldn't walk for 5 weeks. I was losing feeling to my lower body, especially my bladder and all that type of stuff. So I had like a very significant injury. That was I was not allowed to file. Anyways, um, post law enforcement, I go back, I finish my degree. During that time of being severely injured, I discovered medicinal cannabis. I have a stoner brother who lived 10 houses away from me. He's been a stoner for 35 years. I called him up. I said, "Hey, dude, I'm in so much pain. Can you bring me something?" He brings me something. I smoke a little bit for the first time and since I was a teenager, and I had about a 50% reduction in pain. I was like, holy moly, there's something to this. So I start just learning more about the plant. I'm like, wow, yeah, I feel, you know, a little high, but I also don't have back pain. Okay, there's something to this. So I start educating myself more and more and more. I have a minor back surgery. I have a microdiscectomy, but 2 months after my microdiscectomy, I herniated. So I'm still dealing with daily pain. I
Yes.
don't want to take Tylenol. I hate opioids. So I continue down the medicinal cannabis path and just so I start learning more about it. Not using it to get stoned, but using it to just get through my day-to-day life while I'm going back to college, taking care of my kids. I have two special needs kids and one typical kid. So when I start learning about it, I start volunteering in the community, the medicinal community. This is before recreational was legal in Arizona, in the medicinal community, and hearing people's stories about how it's impacted their lives and how they can get out of bed now, they can be with their families now, they can have their mental health journeys, all of this stuff. So I'm learning about it. I'm starting to volunteer and all that type of stuff. And then one night, I smoked the right strain. I'm in my kitchen. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning. And suddenly, the incident that I just spoke to you about came back to me
Hmm.
out of nowhere. And I was now disassociated from it. I'm high, I'm medicated, I'm disassociated from it. And now I'm actually able to go back and relive the entire thing and walk through the emotions. Yes, I just got emotional on here talking about it because it's a very emotional thing, but I
Sure.
used to not be able to even talk about it or think about it.
Yeah.
So I had this epiphany and I have this breakthrough mentally just using cannabis in and of itself. And I was like, oh, so then again, I start getting more and more involved into the medicinal side. When I start volunteering in the medicinal community, some people find out about my past and they asked me, again, this is before recreational. They said, hey, would you teach classes on how to interact with law enforcement when you're a cannabis patient? I'm like, that's a great idea. So I start doing that for free. And then I got hooked up with a girl who is now a Maricopa County Superior Court judge. I shouldn't say hooked up. We met and made a couple classes together and started instructing. Then COVID came. So COVID came, recreational becomes legal, whole different dynamic in the state of Arizona. I start getting involved in activism.
Hmm.
So I get asked to join an organization called Arizona Normal, which is the Arizona chapter of the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws,
Hmm.
because I'm seeing such good benefits. I'm also advocating for the addition of autism for medical marijuana for autism. So not just for children, but for anybody with autism. I have two special needs kids, as I said. And then the podcast comes around. It's like, I have something to say. People are asking for my opinion. I have a
Yeah.
very, very different background, and now I'm an open cannabis advocate. And so that's where blue to green. I didn't wear blue. I wore tan. So I was a man in tan, not a boy in blue. I
It's
apologize,
okay,
boys.
bro. No, we're blue. We're blue all the way, bro.
So, but
It's thin blue line.
yes. So blue to green is born. And
Yep.
from there, I said, you know what I want to do is I want to bridge the gap because I saw a lot of similarities between the trauma and the mental health issues in law enforcement versus the trauma and the mental health issues in the cannabis society.
Yeah.
And again, I'm able to see both sides.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there looking at each other going, time out, y'all don't realize how actually similar you are. So I start making contacts, and I didn't contact anybody from my previous department except for the first guy I had on. I don't know if he's still has to remain anonymous because of fear of retribution from the department. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah, that's been an issue. So the podcast is born, and then herein lies the inherent issue with my podcast. Though this is why I'm so appreciative that you invited me onto yours. I can only get people from one police department to come onto my podcast openly.
Uh-huh.
I can, and even first responders don't even want, they'll come on, but they won't come on and say who they work for.
Right. Of course.
So, but the Pinal County Sheriff's Office and now Sheriff Ross Teeple, previous Sheriff Mark Lamb have been, and Deputy Chief or Chief Deputy Matt Thomas, I'm throwing their names out there in shout outs because they give me full access to their department. They're like, hey, go talk to these people. And that has really been able to bridge the gap. And if your viewers have ever seen Frank Slope,
Yeah.
Fridays with Frank,
I would love to have Frank on the show here.
yeah, I'm friends with Frank now because the stoner community posted on a page and like, hey AJ, you should get this guy on your page or on your podcast. So I called in a favor to Chief Deputy Matt Thomas, who came onto my podcast first, and I said, hey man, the stoner community wants Frank. He's like, all right, cool, I'll get you Frank. And like 3 weeks later, Frank is calling me just to chit chat, and the next 2 weeks later, he's knocking on my door, and we're sitting in my studio doing a podcast.
That's
So I've been so blessed because they see past the little cannabis leaves that I put on my logo, and they see that it's an opportunity to connect with the community.
Yeah, man. You're not the only one, brother. That has IA too. I try to get my beloved LAPD off. Imagine I got like 9,000 to choose from, right?
That's amazing. Is that what the number of LAPD is?
It's at one point it was 10,200. I think right now we're in the low eight. But my point is that let's just say patrol 4,000.
Okay.
Hey man, if you're a 10-year veteran, you got an IA like 8 years ago and it's already adjudicated and we can learn from it, come on down. You don't even have to say what department and all that. Just
Right.
come
Right.
on down. But it's the stigma. Your challenges are any different than mine. We have obstacles, and
Yes.
the more we do that, the more that you're cool as hell. Hey, we're just two good dudes, just trying to be informative, man. That's all.
Yes.
We don't have no axe to grind. We're not venting, saying, "Oh my God, look what the department did to me."
You know what? That's a really good point, if I may add to the fact that like everything I said happened almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't begrudge anybody. I don't I don't hold anything against anyone. I actually thank my wife because she called the police when in a moment that she was scared, and ultimately she didn't know that she was saving my life,
There you
and it
go.
was the worst thing and
Yeah.
the best thing that ever happened to me.
No, 100%, bro. Hey, man, look, before I'm going to leave the floor up to you to give any advice to anyone who wants to come on to be a police officer, look, you got to promise me when I go to Arizona, I want all your buddies in a circle with three on rotation, bro. And one's got to be a Philly blunt. I want it all, bro. That's what I want. You know,
We're there, man.
I'm a
We're
big
there.
proponent of cannabis. Shout out to my little sister, Chevy, who I'm definitely going to connect you with because she's in the state of Nevada and she
Okay.
uses cannabis. Phenomenal. She's been a personal chef, a cook for decades now, and she's very good at what she does. Got to connect you to. But hey, man, I'll leave the floor up to you before we wrap it up. What kind of advice do you have for all these youngsters that want to come on and become cops, man?
It's the I think I'm going to use this because I'm on with an LAPD officer. This is going to be awesome, and it's from my childhood. You know exactly where it's from. You know the whole two bulls, a young bull and an old bull standing on top of a hill. Young bull says, "Dad, let's run down and one of those calves overlooking a herd of cows, and yeah, let's go down and get one of those calves and have our way with them." And the dad says, "No, son, let's walk down and have our way with all of them."
Yes.
I never really understood what that meant until I got a little bit older.
Mm,
And I never really understood that the impact of that law enforcement has on people's everyday lives.
yeah.
And it's a very, very serious job. I've said many times that I believe it's the most powerful job in the country because it's the only job in which you can strip away a person's constitutional rights.
Mm. Yes.
It is something that needs to be exalted. It is something that needs to be held in high regard. It is something that you need to not see it as a position of authority and power, but see it as protection against a tyrannical government. Even though you work for the government, it's protecting those who cannot protect themselves. And when you come across those people that are down on their luck or they're doing good for somebody else, use your discretion,
Mm.
use your humanity, put yourself in those shoes. Also, go and actually donate your time off duty to go and feed the homeless at least once or twice in your life as a police officer.
Good advice.
Get out of the uniform, go down, be with the people. And I will tell you what, I started doing that with my podcast, and it's a completely different dynamic. You are not there as authority, you're there as help. And it's just something that I recommend everybody should do to see the actual realities of what we think they are and who they are to what they actually are. And remember, they're human beings. So
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, brother, you got a friend for life. You can call me
thanks,
anything
man.
you want. I do expect a visit to the studio
Absolutely.
when you come here to
Absolutely.
Cali, bro. And then
Absolutely.
I'll make my way
And
to Arizona sooner or later.
feeling is very mutual,
Yep.
100%.
So let's keep in touch and thank you for everything. We're going to wrap this up. Please be safe out there and don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.